So welcome. We're jumping into the Horizon Room today, and I'm joined by some good friends and very respected colleagues. I'm going to share my screen so that we can all see sort of what we're talking about here. We got a great topic today. For those of you who haven't joined us in the Horizon Room, this is really an opportunity to do some truth telling, and we do that. There's no holds barred. We take the gloves off, all those things. And really start to dig into some challenges and some solutions. So that's the purpose of today. And we're gonna hear from some professionals, folks who are doing things on the street. There's always room for questions. We very rarely get them. However, I do get a good number of responses popping into my email and into the chat directly for me. So I'm going to jump into introductions. Unfortunately, one of our guests today, Senator Howard Stevenson, had an emergency and is not going to be able to make it. He may jump in a little bit late, but I let him off the hook and said, you deal with what you got to deal with, and we'll be happy to have you. But I've got two other individuals that I really want to introduce, and I'm just going to let them introduce themselves. But Ihsan Katulla, a very, very respected colleague from Cobb County in Georgia. They're doing some fantastic things. I asked him to join us in this conversation because they've got some stuff figured out. Cale Charles, again, from St. Vrain in Colorado, also a very respected colleagues. Cale and I have been working together for many years and see eye to eye on a lot of stuff, but they've got some things figured out too. So we've got two different perspectives today. Ihsan, can you give a quick intro? Where are you? What are you up to today?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ihsan Katulla. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Accountability in Cobb County School District, which is just the north suburbs of Atlanta. We're a district of about 110,000 students, and we employ about 8,000 teachers, about 15,000 staff members in the district. So we try to serve all the teachers in our district, and because of the dynamics of our district, we really rely on keeping our staff to ourselves.
Great. That's I like that you smirked when you said that, because I think that the translation of that is, don't try to come take our teachers. Just don't do it. Yep. That I think that was a warning. Yep. Understood. Cale, a quick intro.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. St. Vrain schools are located in Boulder County, north of Denver, north of Boulder. We're about 33,000 students and growing continuously as we go through this. And really have been with Chris and many other districts across the nation, really very interested in lots of different topics, particularly around personalization of education for our students. And just happy to be here and learn and have a great discussion. I think today is about teacher shortage.
It is. Today we're digging in, and so this is something that we've been hearing. The Learning Council travels the nation, and we've hit about 30 cities in the space of a year. And we listen to a lot of folks. We get to partner with a lot of school systems and administrators and teachers and principals and policymakers like Senator Stevenson. And really the purpose of the Horizon Room is to lend a hand and share the learning. And it isn't because everyone has stuff figured out and we've got it nailed, because none of us do, but we are working hand in hand together to get forward, to start moving forward and solve some things. So today's is actually kind of a tough topic because it's all over the place. We see a teacher shortage happening in places where we might not expect to see it. I know that our small rural systems are really struggling with this. And a lot of it is economic. But the challenge is this, right? We're close to 1 million teachers short of the need. Families are looking for alternatives to traditional systems. They're looking for a different experience and they're finding it, right? So what we see is attrition happening in some of our systems, and school systems are scrambling. They're just grasping at straws and trying to figure out how do we stem the attrition? How do we reformulate our system so that it's attractive to work and stay there, to attend and stay? And what I've seen in the media and in a lot of legislation is that we're just going to throw money at it and let's just increase compensation. And that's fine, except that maybe that's not the real problem, and maybe it's not the real solution. And so I'm gonna start us with that, and I've got a couple of data slides that sort of back up this first question. And my first question is, what is the real problem? What's the real problem? Why are we experiencing a teacher shortage from your perspective, in your systems? Isan, can you take that? What's the real problem?
Well, I think COVID has threw a curveball into what education is. And so a lot of teachers that you look into is the ability for them to, again, regain that one-on-one with the students. So regaining one-on-one the way it was done before can no longer exist. We're in a different world, in a different format. And I think one of the key things that we're beginning to find is the proper support that you provide to the teachers. Because providing the proper support for the teachers empowers them even more to remove the doubt they have in their teaching skills. So it's critical to rethink what education looks like now and empowering the teachers to stay longer in the education. So to me, that is a critical component. The proper support must be attained by the teachers to strengthen their abilities in themselves so that we can translate to the students.
So that's interesting, because that causes me to have a curiosity about the skill component of that. And we do hear from teachers and administrators at the building level, something has changed. The role seems to have shifted. Obviously, traditional is no longer okay if it ever was. And so supporting them, if support is part of the problem, that's one of those things that I think we three have been talking about professional learning for years. We've been talking about that as sort of the cornerstone of how you help adults move forward. And I think that support is a great thing, because you don't see that coming up very often, right? The data that I'm showing here says meaningful work, but what goes into meaningful work? And that may be a component of that. That's fascinating. Cale, what do you think about that? What's the real problem?
Well said by both of you, first of all. And as Isan said, I think COVID did change a lot of things. One of the things that I'll add to the discussion is that now parents are more involved than ever via being able to come into classrooms. They were definitely when we were in shutdown mode, and they were there constantly looking in. And it really, I don't think it's a bad thing. It caused them to be more involved, which for a lot of our teaching staff, I think is new. So it's, again, helping them get through that, and probably to do a better job as districts in communicating out with families and making more meaningful partnerships with families beyond what their role change. And we've been talking about that for the last 12 years or so, about how the traditional mode of instruction, that paradigm, needs to shift. But I'd say also that more meaningful engagement with our community, and some of our teachers may not be prepared for that level of engagement.
That's fascinating, because I think that, in fact, I just had a conversation with another colleague about a smaller system, and they had a referendum up. So the funding in this community and the state, as it is in many, is a little bit shifty, and so they, if they have to have more revenue in order to account for inflation, to account for increasing costs and expenses and things like that, all the things that make the machine work, it didn't pass in this small community. And so that meant that the system was then facing job elimination for teachers, program elimination, all of those things. And part of the problem was that communication that you're talking about. And even though we do have maybe an increase in people looking into the system, do we really have meaningful and authentic communication happening that helps everyone understand what is it that we're trying to go accomplish? What is it we're trying to do? And I think that's a great point. I think that might be one of the areas that we overlook. I come from a marketing background before I was an educator, and marketing the school, that's critical. That's critical. It's one of those things that you just can't overlook. So if we acknowledge that there's a multifaceted sort of a problem, are you both seeing an exodus of teachers, or are you seeing your teacher core sort of hunkering down? We're good. We feel like we're in a good spot. Isan, what do you think about your current group?
Well, I like the slide that you have up regarding the data and regarding the colleagues. I used to be a science teacher. I taught multi-level science teacher from low-level physics to kids who can do math to all the way advanced to robotics. And so I have taught multitude of students, worked with many teachers as a school admin. But the one thing I learned over time is that the colleagues become a critical component. Teachers can't do this solely by themselves. There's no way of collaboration that has to be designed for the benefit of the students. When that collaboration does exist among 2 teachers, 3 teachers, the same subject, same grade level, that strengthens the students, the outcomes for the students. And that's why colleagues becomes critical. And I think with good colleagues that are collaborating, demonstrating respect to each other, will strengthen the retention component. They will stay longer. When a teacher goes out on themselves, pardon the expression, become an island to themselves, they're secluded from communication, as you were talking about earlier, and Kale actually referred to it. When they become so solely adept by themselves, that's it. That, to me, contributes to the movement of teacher out of the profession.
That's interesting. And I think that, we've seen that in workforce data for a long time, just in general. If people feel isolated, they're just not, their productivity goes down, and job satisfaction goes out the window, and educators are no different, although the job is hard. And so when you layer that on top, then oh my gosh, really? No thanks. I'm out. Yep, I'm tapping out. Kale, any thoughts on your what you're seeing in your staff? What do you see?
So we are blessed, Chris, that we don't really have a teacher shortage, certainly in certain areas that we've always had. Higher level mathematics, special education, some world language. We've had some shortage. We've always had shortage in those areas. But it isn't the case for some of our rural areas in the state of Colorado, and I'd say across the nation. They are having a lot of difficulty attracting teachers to come to their areas to teach. So definitely starting to see that across the state of Colorado, and I'd say across the nation in the smaller school districts, for sure.
And so that's curious because, folks are moving around the country, right? And they're moving for various reasons. There's migration happening. And in a lot of instances, folks are out there looking for a smaller experience, which, in fact, in the area that I live, is actually drawing people here. And that's fascinating to me because now all of a sudden real estate is a premium. And yet the schools are still struggling to find educators to come and live and work in a place. And how do you, what would you ascribe that difficulty to in the rural areas? What is it about the rural area that makes it so difficult?
I think part of it, Chris, in rural areas in Colorado on the Eastern Plains, it's lack of cultural things to do, lack of opportunities to look at things, lack of jobs, perhaps. Definitely what you're describing is happening in our mountain towns, Chris. And I'm from a mountain town, and the real estate is going off the charts because people are moving in from different areas of the country with money and buying up properties. The problem that we're facing then is the teacher salaries actually, and I know throwing money isn't the sole answer, but teachers can't even afford to move into those areas. There isn't affordable housing, gas, utilities, food. It just makes it unmanageable for them.
Yeah. It's a sort of an insidious cycle because you, on the one hand, say, yeah, we're building this beautiful community. It's a great place to live and work, but then you can't live there. I know that in the community just north of us, we have teachers who are living in a hotel during the school year, and that's bananas. What is that, right? And so how do you reconcile that as a community and say it's actually okay? These people are the number one impact or influence on our students' ability to succeed and thrive, and it's okay that they live in a hotel. That's fine, right? That's bananas. I don't know. And Isan, you had brought up colleagues. What is it about the collaboration aspect that sort of it melds with meaningfulness, and so thinking about these small rural schools, and it's your larger systems as well. how do you craft meaningfulness? What is that? Is there something about that we should dig into a little bit more?
I think, as Zakil is saying, there is always a difficult, no matter how big of a district you are, teacher attrition, specifically in the science area, the math and special ed. I would wholeheartedly agree with that. Because Cobb County, it is becoming a metro district because Atlanta continues to expand and it goes in more into the metro area. The strength that we've developed is that Cobb collaboration for the teachers to be able to spend time with each other on a daily basis, discussing curriculum, discussing development of content. One of the biggest things that we've allowed is the teachers to have an input in digital world, creating the content digitally, having the ability for them to see exactly what it is. So our superintendent, Mr. Ragsdale, spent many years since 2014, when I've been in this role, we started creating our own learning management system. To support the teachers is to allow the teachers to see the child from the first day, everything they need to know about that child. Because once you know everything to know about that child, you will know the strength, the weaknesses, where they achieve, where they regress. And so creating your own internal learning management system that is designed by the teachers, and the teachers give us input to change what they're looking for. That to me increases collaboration because they're seeing the real-time data and not depending on lagging data. Because lagging data, you will not be able to make proper decision using lagging data. So really, to strengthen that collegiality among teachers, they have to be seen at the same data, especially if you're teaching same subject in elementary school, or in high school, you're teaching the same content. You've got 9,000 freshmen that you're dealing with all taking algebra at the same time. But having your own learning management system, and those teachers have designed the assessments for those across the district. They have designed the curriculum for it, what videos the students will participate, what assessment the students will participate. To me, that strengthens the teacher's voice. Compensation does play a part, but we can talk about it down the road. But how do you strengthen the teacher voice without proper collaboration amongst their colleagues in a real-time setting with the real-time data for the student?
I like the word real in that, and I have a question to follow that, but I'm going to go back to Cale real quick. How do you do that? How do you smurge collegiality, collaboration, and meaningfulness? What's the magic sauce there?
You have to set up structures for it, whether it's through a learning management system, whether it's for what is one of the givens that we've heard time and time again, we need more time to collaborate too. And so I think it's incumbent upon central admin leaders to create that time for like-minded either grade levels or departments to be able to get together across the district. Now, technology has played a huge role in that. That's one of the, I think, lessons learned from the pandemic is that we've got these great systems now. Zoom, we're doing one right now, Chris.
Right.
WebEx, whatever the case may be, we're a very large geographical area in our district. We don't have to travel around. We can hop on this and do a lot of really meaningful collaboration, learning. I think it is about, the notion is absolutely correct, of giving people a say in their workplace. That goes back to what it says on your slide about meaningful work. When we see meaning in our work, when we see that we're successful, then that is something that is going to be self-fulfilling and ignite the passion of teachers and want them to stay, that they see that they're making a difference. Part of that, as Isan said, coming back, is having central admin support, principal support for a variety of different things, depending on where you're at on the spectrum as a classroom teacher.
Right. Because as I'm listening, I think, I know systems where the lead learner, the superintendent really has a clear grounding in what is best, truly what is best for kids, and really wants to build a system for that. And yet gets pushback when a structure for collaboration is set in place, and you're like, well, wait a minute, this is actually good. You guys get to work together and you get to collaborate and lighten the load, right? Many hands. All of those concepts are all good, and we could nod our heads and say, yep, there's 4 DeForest questions and those are all valid, and this is good for you and it's good for me and it's great for kids, because ultimately that's all we're doing here is creating conditions for kids to learn. What do you do? How do you start that? Because what we just said was create systems and structures for collaboration to improve meaningfulness, but how do you start that in a place where you don't already have it?
Well, Chris, if I can jump in on that. First of
Yeah.
all, it's about setting that and knowing that you mentioned a superintendent or a principal, school leader having a vision. And
Yeah.
I think that's really important. And that vision should be collaborative. Out of that, you build incentives, you build an action plan. You know, those are those models of change that everybody knows. There's several out there that are really good. But where I see leaders, and especially in education, fall down is when they get that, i.e., pushback that you mentioned. And that's when you got to stand on your convictions. You've got to be able to be a leader. You're not going to be the most popular person in the room when you do things, particularly if it involves change. Many human beings don't like to get out of their comfort zone. It's scary. And we've got to give them support, as Isan said. We've got to be able to, but we're not going to stop. We're going to keep moving forward on this. We may make adjustments. We'll listen to feedback, but we're not stopping. We're going to keep moving forward. And sometimes that is scary as a leader in any organization to think you're getting this. But if you are solid in your convictions, you have a group that's around you, that is surrounded you, have put it out there. It's really about providing that support that was mentioned earlier to make sure that you move the system forward. I've seen so many schools and districts that'll just stop flat because they don't want to do that. We all like, and this, I'm getting on a soapbox here. I'm sorry, I apologize.
It's good. That's what it's for.
We all want to be liked as leaders. We all want to feel validated. But when you're a leader, sometimes you are alone. And that's a scary place. And you've got to know that going in. And when you can do that, you'll get past it. What's the old phrase? This too shall pass. It will. Trust me. I've been through enough of it. So have you, Chris. I'm sure Isan has as well. This shall pass. And we're going to come out on the other end of this better. So that's how, to me, you get through it. Now, I don't want to say that the planning part of that isn't important. It is. Details are important. Making sure people are compensated, all those part of your action plan and your follow-throughs and your training, your PD development's very important. But don't stop because people are concerned over certain aspects.
I do agree with the statement that leaders should have convictions. I 100% agree with you on that one. And I know that in a big district that you have 110,000, the biggest conviction that our superintendent has put in place, and I've seen in the past 8 years, is protect instructional time. That is going to be the critical part. So it relies, protecting instructional time. It allows for purposeful minute by minute planning for the teachers to be able to say, this is the way we're going to schedule our classes for elementary, middle, and high. Because when you start doing purposeful scheduling, that's when you start thinking to yourself, I've used my data, I've initiated what scheduling is going to look like, I'm basing what classes, when they're going to be taught, when movement between students is going to occur. So now the teacher will take comfort in knowing that their time, instructional time, is protected, but their collaboration time is protected. So if the scheduling component is not honed in properly, teachers will become dismissive of education because they don't have times to themselves to think, to collaborate, because we've removed it, because we've taken away these small things. They will protect instructional time because that's the vision of the superintendent. But who's going to protect their collaboration time? And that is protected with scheduling throughout the day where collaboration can occur between subject area, grade area, and specifically trying to protect the feedback that you will get from the admin. If the admin can solely look at the master schedule for that year and be able to say, algebra teachers will collaborate during this time and nobody's going to touch that time. Third grade is going to do this time collaboration, or seventh grade ELA will do it at this time. To me, we can have convictions to be able to work with the teachers, keeping them in the field. But if we don't hold true to protecting instructional time and protecting collaborative time, then we start distancing ourselves.
What I'm thinking about as I listen to both of you responding to that, it begins to sound like one of the solutions that we have is to very explicitly set forth structures for meaningful experience for teachers. And we talk about meaningful learning experiences for the kids, and we generally overlook what meaningful experiences for educators could be. And yet that's the crux. That's the thing that is super important as we're getting through this topic. Having those systems to support the function of teaching, having protected times, what in essence you're saying is that we have to protect teaching and learning times, which is weird for me to actually articulate out loud and not in my quiet voice, because as soon as I say those words out loud, what screams to me in the back of my mind is, isn't that the whole idea? Isn't that the whole business that we're in, is teaching and learning? And for us to have somehow gone askew of that is bananas to me. It's a little bit bizarre that now we're talking about, oh yeah, actually, you know what you need to do as a school, you need to explicitly plan to protect teaching and learning, because otherwise it's going to go feral, and then people are going to push back, and then people are going to lose and leave. And what? At that point, my paw raises. I had a terrier dog, and every time I did something that confused him, he would raise his paw and cock his head. And that's what I see right now. I see a raised paw and a cocked head going, what? I kind of don't get that. That's weird. And so I think it rolls into discussions about these other things, compensation, geography. We kind of talked about rural versus urban. I think compensation rolls into that in terms of focus. And I, having been in the classroom, do I believe that our compensation is where it needs to be? That's a huge question. And there are areas that are very well compensated. Could it be better? Probably. But obviously it's not, by this data, it's not the top need. However, to me, that indicates an area of focus and value. So you make time and space for what you value. And in a system, you budget for that as well. And system, I mean larger. What do we think about compensation in the larger scheme of what we're talking about today? Isan, can you jump off with that one?
Yeah, one of the things that I think teachers are human, so they got to feed their family, just like all three of us will feed our family. I mean, that's, some people treat it as a professional, some people treat it as a job, but ultimately, we're working towards an end meet that allows us to support our family. But when it comes to compensation, it has to be critical, where the compensation has to be competitive. But you reach a point of competitive where everybody's the same. Now, what value do we add? How do we make it meaningful through compensation? One of the ideas that we started here in Cobb County is to partner up with the University of West Georgia, where we will be sending 200 teachers starting this summer, and called Georgia's Best. In Georgia's Best, we're allowing teachers, Cobb County will pay for these teachers to go earn their masters. We will pay for them so that way they don't have to have student loans. They will learn more ways to bring back into the classroom. And two, is going to bring back the economic effect into the district that they're teaching in. So the teachers benefit through this compensation because they're getting their masters, bring it into the classroom, and actually inject funding into the economy, because those master pay will increase close to about 7 to 10% just by completing master, where they don't come out of with student loans. So it's not just, let me just pay you the money. There's got to be other values that the district has to be able to support to have two returns. One, bring back the money into the community, and two, bring it back into the classroom.
That's fascinating to me, because that's a creative in the box thinking moment. And so I'll get to you, Cale, momentarily, but how did you come up with that? Where did that come from?
Our superintendent, we were trying to work with the idea about the teacher retention, and we realized which teachers are the ones that will leave. And most of them are the ones that are at the, what we call early entry teachers. They're the ones that are just up with the bachelor's. And so we started focusing on that idea. So our superintendent started partnering up with West Georgia University to be able to say, how about if we partner up where we identify the teachers, we identify the high need area. So this whole summer, we're going to focus on special ed. So all these 200 teachers that have been selected will get a master's in special ed and instructional technology in special ed, be it in autism, be it in dyslexia and science of reading. And so the idea is stemmed from keeping Cobb County teachers for Cobb County. As I stated earlier, do not come and poach our teachers, because we are investing in them. And so his idea, his forethought was to be able to say, we pay teachers decently right now, but look at them when they complete it. In 2 years, we don't know what the economy will do at that time. But if we put our teachers as a forefront for setting them up for success in 2 years, they're more likely to give us another 3 to 5 years after that.
That's amazing. If and I see clapping over here. So that's a really creative partnership that almost anybody could go do. And that you just went and made it a priority and said, hey, we're going to solve this, but we're going to use data. We're going to make it a data-based informed decision. And then we're going to build data. And Cale, what do you think about compensation? How does that mix in?
I think it absolutely mixes in with part of teachers' decision. And I think it's more about, the first 3 years, but also going into the profession. There's a lot of opportunities for them to go into something, and teaching may not seem that attractive to them. So something in a program like that, which we have something very similar, where we'll pay for their master's degree as well, so that they can teach some higher level classes. It's a great program, and our teachers really, it helps them. It gives them an incentive to go on. And the way we have the structure right now is that, if you get your master's, you're going to get a pay along with years in the profession. That's something, that can be talked about at some other point, but I think it's a great program. I think congratulations for you guys for coming up with that as well. Ours has a few parameters around it that doesn't seem like you have. So congratulations. It's awesome.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think in terms of providing solutions, that creativity, sometimes we see folks who are struggling with the problem get sort of paralyzed, right? And all of a sudden the complexity and depth of this challenge becomes overwhelming. And until you have some folks throwing around, sort of spitballing and looking at data, just look at the data, who's leaving? Even just ask. The simple fact of having an exit interview and asking someone, well, why is it that you're leaving our system? Wow, that's easy, right? We could certainly ask that. We could definitely do that. And I think that's critical. We also have funding sort of limitations. And that's something that while we can impact that, how do we creatively navigate those systems? We see a lot of information online about how the funding woes have become what they are, what the weird formulas for prototypical schools happens to be, and what the impact is in terms of organizations of different sizes. But how do we help counsel people who would say, I'm beholden to what funding I have. I can't go outside of that. What do we say to those people? Where do we go?
I think part of it, and I'm going to guess it's different in different states, the way that you can obtain additional monies. But we went many years ago, and this is through my superintendent, Dr. Don Haddad, and we started to engage our communities in the power of public education. And we didn't approach it from a deficit mindset. And I think that's very important. We went and said, here's what a really strong public education system will do for you, whether you're retired or not, because we knew we were going to go with, in Colorado, and I'm assuming other states, was called a mill levy override, so that we could get more money. And what we said is that a strong educational system will increase your property values. It will attract businesses to the area. It will lessen crime. It will lessen gang activity. Students will be more engaged. Instead of, we're going to give us some more money because we want to create a better product. Could you imagine McDonald's, Pepsi, or something coming out and saying, give us some money and we'll come out with a better drink? Holy cow, that'll go over well, wouldn't it?
I'd love for them to make a better Big Mac. I mean, if they could just do that, I think I'll be okay.
Yeah, or the one that you've both heard. We're going to cut art, music, PE.
Right.
Well, that doesn't resonate with people. The other argument does. And it worked magic for us. We passed 2 mill levies that in the last 12 years have brought in, and I kid you not, almost $1 billion extra funding for us. $1 billion. We get $60 to $70 million a year, maybe more, from those 2 mill levies, because our community was engaged with us. I'm simplifying things. It took a lot of work, a lot of boots on the sidewalks, out in the streets to do this. But that's what resonates. We've got to get us out of this deficit mindset. Public education is one of the best things going in this country. We produce the vast majority of engineers, doctors, lawyers, teachers. People come to us from all over the world to go to our universities. That's what we got to get out there. Not that we don't have enough money or we have to have a bake sale to fund this project. So I think that's one way, and we've got all the data and the money to show for it. It will work. And we passed many bonds too, because we're growing and we're attracting people even after COVID. We're attracting students in droves.
Yeah. Isan, what do you think?
I think Gil hit it right on the nose. You're going to have to be eclectic in your thought process. How are you going to go to budget? Try to grow a bigger budget, trying to minimize how much debt you have. And thankfully, with this superintendent that we've had in Cobb, Mr. Ragsdale, he's been able to do that. But you can deal with financial issues if you allow parents choice. We got to start allowing parents to choose the format of learning that they want for their child. The number one thing that we need to be able to do in a public institution is to say, you're the parent. And I've said this many times in a lot of conversations that I've had. We take pride that we teach those children. We take them to heart. We feel their pains. We feel their sacrifices. But the moment we start taking choice of public education from the parents, we start digressing backward, that we are the ones that know what's best for that child. When in reality, and I can't say this enough in any meeting that I'm in, any data that we collect on the students belongs to the parent. That's it. It doesn't belong to anybody else, because if you go with that simplicity that any data we collect on a student belongs to the parent, then the parent will be very informed to decide what is the best choice of education for their child. And from that standpoint, when the choice is given to the parents, not many parents, if it's a successful public education, they will stay in there. So you don't have that transiency that occurs in a lot of our districts into other format of learning for their children. Some schools have a transiency, and I'll admit in Cobb County, we have schools that have transiency in the 40% where students leave one day, go to another school, then come back. And then we have schools that are at 2% transiency. We feel okay that if a parent chooses to do a virtual learning for their children, we have an option. If the parent wants to stay in that school and do virtual, that is their option. If the parent wants to have face-to-face, they have an option. To me, fighting a budget must rely on a parent's choice to believe what is being given to them in public education will support their child's needs.
And I sorry, excuse me. I think that it's, I'm choked up. I think what that says to me is that we are still working on making things meaningful, right? The top bar on this chart that I'm showing is still the number one thing. And you can take a look at, we had a conversation in the last Horizon room with instructional coaches, and the bottom line is meaningful task. It's meaningful, authentic experiences. And if we can't bring meaning to the experience, the broader experience and our system, then we're always gonna have a revolving door. I think it's critical, it's dire that we have systems let go a little bit. And so what we're talking about now is models, right? So if we're thinking traditional versus a range of progressive models, what role does that play? What role does the school model or the learning model play in creating that meaningful experience?
You want to take this one, Gil, or you want me to start?
Go ahead.
I think here I would attack the state policies. You have to be able to go after the state policies and stretch them without breaking them. I said that, stretch them without breaking them. In the state of Georgia, you can be either a charter school system, or you could be what used to be called IE Square or strategic waiver school system. Cobb County is a strategic waiver school system in that we can waive Title 20 policies under this strategic waiver that we have a contract with the state as long as we fulfill it. So there is this idea that seat time could be waived. You don't have to have this many hours to be able to earn a credit. Remember, how do you make it meaningful for the teachers? You don't need a student to sit in 90 hours to learn algebra for some kids. They might need 35, 45, 60 hours, but other kids do need 90 hours. The other part that you have meaningful is how you are able to code students to get your full budget or your full funding, i.e. your 6 segments in the state of Georgia to be under quality-based education for full-time equivalency. It's how you schedule to get your 6 segments where The students are with you specific number of hours, but what you do during that time becomes meaningful. I.e., they can go to an algebra class, they can go to math class, but then you build in what we would call like an advisement. An advisement where 45 minutes of students get some kind of support, either an acceleration support or a remediation support, whichever term you choose best.
Mhm.
But that was designed, that specific thing designed that we designed in our school was because we were able to stretch the state policy to fit the needs of our students in our schools.
And sometimes people believe I can't touch that. That is written in stone, and I'm sorry, seat time is seat time, and we're beholden to that in addition to any number of invasive testing species that enter the ecosystem. And so folks listening in, take note of this, please, because you actually can be successful and creative inside the box. You have to do this. You have to plan for flexibility. I like the idea of stretch without breaking. That's critical. We have to be able to do that. Cale, same question back at you. Where do we go? Where does model fit into this?
Well, part of it, we've been offering school choice and focus schools for the last 15 years. And that has been crucial. It's always been said to give parents a choice. Students have a lot of interests and a lot of, we've tried to create a lot of different pathways within our feeder systems for students to be able to pursue their interests. And, you know, one of our programs that we have is called P-TECH. I'm sure you're familiar with that. Mm-hmm. Pathways into Technology, Early Childhood, early college education, where think about this. You go through high school, you'll get a high school diploma. You'll have an AA degree, and our first one was in computer administration systems. You'll have a paid internship. In this case, it was with IBM, and then you're first in line for a job with IBM. We have kids that are graduating 4 years, AA degree, debt free. We pay for it, and they're getting hired $65,000 right off the bat to IBM. They're debt free. That is a huge choice, and we're open up our fifth one actually next year. We have them in cybersecurity, we have them in biotechnical med, and that has been huge for us. And we have that idea of choice. You can go to any district school. I'm sure it's the same in our district. Doesn't matter. You can go wherever you want, depending. So parents shop around. And it's really been good for our schools to be able to market themselves, to be able to promote themselves, have pride in that. I think it's been really good for student retention. So that's been, that has been huge for us as we go through this.
Yeah, I see a number of, in my mind, I see a number of school systems that are woefully stuck in a traditional mode. And when I listen to both of you speak, in my mind, I'm clapping and I'm like, that's perfect. That's like the nirvana. It's the thing. That's the golden egg. And yet I know that I'm going to have emails by the end of this hour saying, yeah, that's nice, but how do you start? How do you get started on that? And for both of you, I mean, Cale, you've been at this for a long time, like longer than you and I have known each other. You've been at this. And so these are all great ideas. And I see them shining in my mind, but where do you begin with that? How do you even get started toward those pathways? Isan, you've got a similar thing. How do you start?
Well, I like what Cale is saying. I am a firm believer. I used to be, as I said earlier, I'm a science teacher, but my background is in constructivism, allowing the student to construct their knowledge. And here, I like what Cale said. I mean, the idea of knowledge ecosystem model. I like that idea that where the student is being able to develop their ability early on, not just in high school. We think of high school with light bulb comes on in high school. That might happen for some students. It does happen for other students based on their characteristic. But in this knowledge ecosystem, it has to start being initiated early on to be able to develop a curriculum that is satisfactory to what the student needs are. Both emotional, self-serving, academic, all whatever it entails starts early on. And I'm not talking about let's just hand a survey to the student. Let's hand a survey what you're interested in. That's not where I'm going with. This is the knowledge that we know. What is the student capable of and how do we strengthen through our curriculum that is being developed? And this knowledge ecosystem, I liked what I heard from Gail. We do have programs in our district where we push that in various areas. We got MATIC program, IB program. We have a CETA where we are focusing on the need. We got with the community and said, okay, if we were going to develop a program that it allows for students to learn a career pathway, what are 4 or 5 careers that would be deemed for our community? Because when you ask the community, their needs are different than the population of the state. And so when you start focusing on that, love the idea that you can do an AI design system, cybersecurity system. But really, we always have to come back to say, do we have enough plumbers, electricians, woodworking, mechanics, all these simplicity that the community needs of the basic skills to thrive as a community instead of allowing our students to escape outside of our community. So that knowledge ecosystem, Gil, I am great even with you on that point.
I love this. So this is fascinating because this connects to another side of my current conversation with folks, and that is economic development. There's a good number of schools that I'm or communities that I'm studying right now that have actually died and gone away because the community wasn't planful in strengthening the school, which was the community school. And for, like you're saying, Isan, this is perfect because for some, you want to say, oh, you can be an astronaut, you can be a doctor, you can be a whatever, you can go to AI, you can fly a drone, you can do all these things, and those are all awesome. But how does the school support the longevity and growth of the community that it's in? If the community is primarily of a certain job type within the economy, and that economy could be tourism driven, for example, or it's whatever, it's a steel mill or it's a whatever. How do you maintain that boomerang citizenship so that even if they go away to school, they come back? If they go away, they come back because they're contributing to something that the community needs. That's huge. That's gigantic. And that's overseen by a lot of folks. They overlook that very, very clearly. It's not even on the radar. The idea of knowledge ecosystem, if one of you doesn't hurry up and trademark that before I do at the end of this call, sorry, but that's actually a fascinating idea, a knowledge ecosystem, because that speaks to much more than the act of teaching and or learning. That speaks to tendrils that go out into the world, and that's fascinating to me. That, as a closing thought, I can't even top that. That's going to be gold. I know that there's folks responding right now on knowledge ecosystem. They might beat us to the punch and actually trademark that one. Sorry, fellas, but I think that's a fascinating idea, and I know that there's more to dig into that. We're sort of in the waning minutes of our time here, but I do want to get to some advices. I want to make sure that we leave today with what your advice would be to someone who's like, oh my gosh, that sounds so great. I love knowledge ecosystem. I love that there's flexibility. I love that people can go wherever they want to go, and that all of the programs support whatever kids want to do. I don't even know. And at that point, I'm just going to go back to my comfort zone. What is your advice to people who really truly want to do this? In order to retain your staff and to make the staff experience meaningful, which then translates to kids having meaningful experiences, what is your advice? What do you do? Where do you go?
So, Chris, part of what we're doing to make meaningful for our students and staff as well, when we started looking, we knew there was going to be a teacher shortage, getting back to our original objective. And we chose to start working with some of our universities. And I got to be honest with you, it was a disaster. We tried to come up with some innovative ways to look at student teaching, to shorten their time in some of the traditional classes. And we ran up against brick walls, which wasn't surprising. So what we did is we're going to start growing our own. And so we developed a system called P-Teach, Pathways to Teaching. And I don't know if Chris, you and I have talked about this, but this introduces St. Vrain Valley students, and here's the other part, classified staff to a career as an educator. And so we did find University of Colorado Denver that would partner up with us. And so our high school students and or paraprofessionals He said, have you ever had a paraprofessional that was as good as any teacher you had? They just didn't have the credential. We have several of them. And so they could earn up to 31 credits towards a degree. And I've got some listings here in early childhood education, STEM, bilingual certification, SPED. And they will have field experiences, and then they'll have 31 credits towards that teaching degree, admission into UCD. And we're just starting. We started this about 7 years ago. We're starting to hire those people back finally, some of our own. And talk about motivating for our students. And that was something that we really said, we're going to, okay, you guys don't want to help us out, meaning higher ed. We have 2 huge universities that wouldn't work with us. We're going to do it on our own then and grow our own. And we just started it. And that doesn't answer your question, Chris. I'm sorry, I kind of went off on a different avenue there. Nope. But that was something that was been very successful. The other thing is too, our Agile program, Advanced Global Interactive Learning Environments. I have a meeting tomorrow with 5 rural districts to say, we're going to offer you classes, AP classes that you can't find teachers for, upper level math, upper level science. And because of the technology that we have, that we learned about through the shutdown, we're going to offer those classes to you next year, free of charge. And we just want you to benefit from some of the things we've learned and been blessed with. And so that's another thing I think large districts can do for the smaller districts that maybe are facing these teacher shortages, world languages as well. That one's in its infancy. We're trying to, the logistics are the problem with that one, trying to match up schedules and those type of things. But
I might be able to help with that.
Okay, those are 2 things that those are 2 things we're doing about the teacher shortage internally and externally in the state of Colorado.
Awesome. Advices, Isan.
I like that, Kila, because I was going to talk about that later on. The next step that we're going to work is paraprofessional in this program with the West Georgias to allow them to be able to earn. The 2 advices that I would give. One would be at the high level for higher administration at the district level. When the district gets the money, it has to be spent on that program fully. If a district gets $2 million for a dyslexia program, they should spend $2 million on dyslexia program. If the district gets $150,000 for the 7th grade music program, it's got to spend $150,000 on music program. If the district wants to invest grants that are specifically for financial literacy, then we allow it to be for financial literacy. To me, and this is where you have that the superintendents who've been long enough in their job to be able to say, we know how to manage the money. And Keel said that earlier, that is one of the components to be able to take the funds that come in specifically geared for one purpose and keeping it for that purpose, because that will go a long way to demonstrate respect that the teachers need, because the teachers are reading about this, seeing this, watching the board meetings, thinking to themselves, the superintendent has said, we're going to commit $2 million to dyslexia. And guess what? We've spent $2 million on dyslexia. And then the other big advice that I would bring it down to the teacher level would be, do not dismay that, encourage collaboration. New teachers need collaboration as much as seasoned teachers that need collaboration who's been in 28. To me, that is the key component to be having conversation, to have real life conversation, because no matter what happens, as much as people want to have collaboration with the AI or Chat GPT, it cannot be the same thing as having collaboration with a real person that is teaching similar as you are. Those would be my 2 big points.
So I think that I like the collaboration aspect, and in my mind, I'm hearing somebody say, our schedule doesn't even allow for collaboration. And that tells me not that your schedule doesn't, but that you won't, because it can happen. It can, obviously, clearly, both of you have done that. You've tossed your older ideas of what the schedule and calendar should look like, and you've prioritized certain things that dictate the design of that schedule. So folks that are saying, oh yeah, I'm sorry, our state doesn't allow that, or oh, I'm sorry, we're only configured for this. I'm going to call BS on that, because yeah, it's hard. It's not easy. It just isn't easy. But you either prioritize that time, increase the meaningfulness for teachers, and help to solve the problem that you might be experiencing, or you don't. And that's the choice. That's the choice. It doesn't make it easy. Isan, you've got your hand up.
I love that you made that comment because I'm going to tell whoever's listening on this one, every state has a contract with the United States Department of Education. And under that contract, there's all these flexibilities that can be built in because there's measurement flexibility. For us is the College Career Readiness Performance Index that the state wants to see, which encompasses the big thing, which is the graduation rate. The USED likes to call it dropout rate. We call it graduation rate. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's that contract that individual states have with the USED that allows for the flexibility that the district can get from the state, who can get it from the USED under Title 20.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's knowing the system, right? You got to pay attention, and you got to know your assets in your box. You have to know the box. Any last thoughts, Cale, before we sign off here?
I just appreciate the opportunity to talk about these things and learn from people. Chris, Isan, and thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I love the passion that's in this room. And I hope we are some value to the people that were listening.
Well, I can tell you that I've got things popping into my my inbox right now, and so I'm going to have some responses to make as soon as we hang up. Isan and Cale, always an honor and a joy to be with you in the same virtual room. I know that I'll probably see you both very soon in your respective states because we're going to be making the tour rounds again. And for anybody else who's listening, make sure that you connect with these folks because it's critical that you take their learning and make that step. Just connect with them, reach out. Partnering is one of those big things. We learn from each other. We talked about collaboration. This is no different. Collaborate to get this problem solved because you can't do it by yourself. So real quick, May 23rd is our next Horizon Room episode. We're back on episode 4. This is our second season. What we're talking about here is innovation to outcomes and all the things that go in between that. These two gentlemen have deep experience in that. If you can dial into that one because it's live and it's going to be fun. These are also recorded, so I know that a lot of folks actually download and record these to listen at their leisure. So that's it for us. Thanks to both of my guests today, and that's me signing off from the Horizon Room. Have a great day.